Imagine standing in the bustling streets of ancient Rome or walking through the markets of Babylon thousands of years ago. The sounds, the smells, the chaos, it might feel worlds away from our modern lives. But there's one thing that would instantly connect you to the people of those distant times: laughter. That's right, humor is one of humanity's oldest shared experiences, a universal language that has survived empires, wars, and the rise and fall of civilizations. And some of the jokes that made people chuckle millennia ago, they're still funny today. Think about that for a moment. A joke scribbled on a piece of papyrus in ancient Egypt or etched into a clay tablet in Mesopotamia could still crack a smile on your face right now. What does that say about us, about the threads of human nature that bind us across centuries? These ancient punchlines aren't just relics, they're time capsules, offering a rare glimpse into the minds, values, and everyday lives of people who lived thousands of years before us. They reveal what societies found taboo, what they celebrated, and how they navigated the absurdities of life. And the wildest part, many of these jokes feel startlingly familiar, as if the ancients were poking fun at the same frustrations and quirks we deal with today. That's exactly what we're diving into in this video. We've uncovered 33 ancient jokes that have defied time, surviving wars, migrations, and the slow erosion of history. From a Roman graffiti artist's cheeky one-liner to a Babylonian riddle that still lands today, these bits of humor are more than just curiosities, they're mirrors reflecting our shared humanity. So why do these jokes last when so much else has faded away? What do they tell us about the societies that told them and about ourselves? Get ready for a journey through wit, wisdom, and the timeless art of making people laugh. Because as it turns out, the oldest jokes in the world aren't just history, they're a reminder that some things never change. Let's start with the oldest recorded joke in human history, a little slice of humor scratched onto a clay tablet in ancient Sumeria around 1900 BCE. Picture this: a scribe carefully pressing wedge-shaped symbols into wet clay, chuckling to themselves as they immortalize a joke that would outlast empires. The punchline, something which has never occurred since time immemorial. A young woman did not fart in her husband's lap. Now, at first glance, that might just sound like a crude bit of bathroom humor, but there's so much more to it. This joke isn't just about bodily functions, it's a snapshot of daily life. A playful jab at the dynamics between husbands and wives in ancient Mesopotamia. Think about it, even 4,000 years ago, people were poking fun at domestic life, at the little annoyances and absurdities of marriage. Sound familiar? Fast forward to today, and you'll find stand-up comedians mining the exact same material for laughs. What's fascinating is how little the structure of humor has changed. The setup is simple, an exaggerated claim about something impossible followed by a punchline that twists expectations. It's the same rhythm you'd hear in a modern comedy club. But beyond the laughter, this joke tells us something deeper about Sumerian society. Humor was already a tool for social commentary, a way to gently critique the tensions and power struggles within households. And this wasn't an isolated case. Across ancient cultures, jokes often zeroed in on the mundane: bad bosses, annoying neighbors, the struggles of work and family. A Babylonian tablet from around 1500 BC cracks wise about a lazy worker, while Egyptian papyri mock pompous officials. It seems no matter the era, people loved laughing at the little frustrations of everyday life. So the next time you chuckle at a meme about modern relationships or groan at a joke about your job, remember, you're part of a tradition that stretches back further than you'd ever imagine. Ancient Egypt's papyrus Westcar serves up one of history's most deliciously subversive jokes, proof that even pharaohs, those god-kings who demanded absolute reverence, weren't safe from a well-aimed barb. The joke goes like this. A pharaoh, convinced of his own divine wisdom, challenges his magician to prove his powers by decapitating a prisoner and then restoring his head. The magician agrees, but instead of using the prisoner, he beheads a goose, leaving the pharaoh sputtering in outrage before fixing the bird, the punchline. The pharaoh's arrogance gets knocked down a peg, and the audience gets to laugh at the mighty being outsmarted. This isn't just a gag, it's a rebellion in miniature. In a society where pharaohs were literally worshipped as living gods, poking fun at one's ego was borderline dangerous. Yet here it is, preserved in ink, a testament to humor's power to cut through even the stiffest hierarchies. The joke works because it flips the script. The all-powerful ruler becomes the butt of the joke, while the clever underdog, the magician, wins the day. Sound familiar? Fast forward to today, and you'll see the same dynamic in every late-night monologue skewering politicians or TikTok animations roasting world leaders. The targets change, but the impulse remains laughter as a great equalizer. What's striking is how these ancient jokes reveal the tensions simmering beneath the surface of rigid societies. In Egypt, where class divisions were etched as deeply as hieroglyphs, humor became a pressure valve, a way to air grievances without outright rebellion. Compare that to modern political satire, shows like The Daily Show or memes mocking billionaires, and the parallels are uncanny. Whether it's a pharaoh or a president, humor lets us confront power by making it ridiculous. But the papyrus Westcar joke goes deeper than just mocking authority. It's also a sly commentary on spectacle and cruelty. The pharaoh's demand for a gruesome demonstration mirrors how rulers often used public displays of violence to reinforce their dominance. By swapping the prisoner for a goose, the magician doesn't just embarrass the pharaoh. He subtly critiques the brutality of the system itself. It's a reminder that comedy has always been more than just entertainment. It's a lens for questioning the world. And that lens turns sharply toward class struggles in our next joke, scratched onto an Egyptian ostracon, a piece of pottery used as scrap paper. This one features a farmer arguing with a snobbish bureaucrat, firing back with wit so sharp it could cut stone. The bureaucrat sneers, "You reek of beer," and the farmer retorts, "That's because I actually work for a living, unlike you, who just sits around smelling other people's breath." Suddenly, a 4,000-year-old insult feels ripped from a modern workplace comedy. The joke lands because it speaks to a universal truth. No matter the era, people love seeing the high and mighty taken down a notch. What ties these ancient jabs together is their fearless humanity. They prove that long before hashtags or viral videos, ordinary people were using humor to push back, to connect, and to remind themselves and us that power isn't sacred. It's just another punchline waiting to happen. Buried under layers of volcanic ash from Mount Vesuvius, a joke scrawled on a Pompeii wall gives us a razor-sharp glimpse into ancient Rome's social hierarchies and the quiet rebellion simmering beneath them. It reads, "I marvel, O wall, that you have not collapsed under the weight of all the idiots who have written on you. At first glance, it's just a witty dig at bad graffiti. But look closer and you'll catch the genius of its double meaning. The real punchline, the idiots aren't just amateur artists, they're the wealthy elites who commissioned those very walls, the same people who treated enslaved individuals as property." This joke is a masterclass in coded resistance. Enslaved people in Rome faced brutal punishments for speaking out, so humor became their secret weapon, a way to mock their oppressors without leaving fingerprints. Imagine an enslaved worker chiseling this line into wet plaster, exchanging knowing glances with others who'd read it. The joke's brilliance lies in its plausible deniability. The powerful could laugh along, oblivious to the fact they were the real targets. It's the ancient equivalent of a modern meme dunking on corporate culture, vague enough to slip past the boss, but crystal clear to those in the know. And this wasn't an isolated act of defiance. Across Rome, enslaved people and lower-class citizens used humor to skewer the absurdities of their world. One popular quip compared masters to walking purses, a jab at their obsession with wealth and status. Another joked that the difference between a philosopher and a slave was just the price tag. These bits weren't just laughs, they were survival tactics, psychological armor against dehumanization. Historians even note that some enslavers tolerated this humor, not out of kindness, but because it acted as a pressure valve preventing outright revolt. Fast forward 2,000 years, and you'll find marginalized communities using the exact same playbook. From enslaved Africans in the Americas spinning Biara rabbit tales to outsmart oppressors, to modern comedians like Dave Chappelle using satire to dissect systemic racism, humor has always been a lifeline for the powerless. Think about the way LGBTQ+ stand-ups in the 1980s coded their routines to fly under the radar of censors, or how disabled comics today turn patronizing stereotypes into punchlines. The through line is unmistakable. When you can't fight back directly, laughter becomes your rebellion. But Pompeii's joke also reveals something unexpected about Roman society: the blurred lines between mockery and mutual dependence. Some enslavers reportedly prized witty enslaved individuals, keeping them as status symbols at dinner parties to entertain guests. It's a paradox. The same people being mocked were often the ones demanding the performance. This dynamic echoes in today's entertainment industry, where marginalized voices are celebrated for their edge while still navigating systemic barriers. The difference: ancient Rome's enslaved jesters couldn't cash in on their viral moments. Now, shift the lens to another group that took constant ribbing in ancient jokes: professionals. A famous Roman quip asks, "How do you know if a doctor's incompetent?" The answer: he's got a waiting room. Cue the groans, but this punchline taps into a universal truth. Whether it's physicians in togas or modern telehealth rants, nobody's safe from workplace humor. The ancients loved skewering architects for shaky columns, lawyers for slippery rhetoric, and sailors for tall tales. These jokes weren't just frivolous, they reflected real anxieties about trust, skill, and the gap between what professionals promised and what they delivered. What ties these threads together is humor's role as a social equalizer. Whether punching up at emperors or commiserating over bad service, jokes let people confront power, cope with frustration, and, most importantly, find common ground across divides. The walls of Pompeii may have crumbled, but the human need to laugh at life's injustices, that's as solid as ever. The Greeks, those legendary founders of Western medicine, had their own take on doctor jokes, and trust me, they packed just as much punch 4,000 years ago as they do now. One particularly biting example from the Hippocratic era goes like this: what's the difference between a god and a doctor? The punchline: the gods don't pretend to be doctors. Ouch, at first glance, it's a simple jab at medical hubris, but peel back the layers, and you'll find a brilliantly layered critique. Here's the irony: Hippocrates himself, the father of medicine, was preaching ethics with his famous oath, while everyday healers were peddling everything from crushed beetles to astrology as cures. The joke isn't just about bad bedside manner. It's about the gap between reputation and reality, a theme that's painfully familiar today. Think about modern debates over miracle cures, celebrity doctors hawking dubious supplements, or even the whiplash of conflicting health advice during a pandemic. Some anxieties, it seems, are truly timeless, but the Greeks didn't stop at physicians. Their humor zeroed in on every profession with an inflated sense of importance. Lawyers, one ancient quip compared them to hired swords, paid to argue either side of a case with equal passion. Politicians, a surviving Athenian joke describes them as human weather vanes, spinning with the winds of public opinion. Sound familiar? Swap the togas for suits, and you've got the blueprint for every late-night monologue today. What's fascinating is how these stereotypes persist across millennia. The untrustworthy lawyer, the pompous doctor, the slippery politician, these aren't just tropes. They're cultural reflexes, ways we process our collective distrust of power. The jokes act like societal pressure valves, letting us laugh at the very figures we rely on and resent in equal measure. And then there's the granddaddy of all humor targets, human flaws. A papyrus from Hellenistic Egypt delivers a one-liner that could have been ripped from a modern sitcom. A man complains to his friend about his wife's terrible cooking. The friend says, "Divorce her." The man sighs, "But then who would cook?" The punchline lands because it's not really about food. It's about our endless capacity to gripe, even when we're complicit in our own misery. That's the secret sauce of these ancient jokes. Whether mocking professionals or laughing at our own stubbornness, they reveal a universal truth. Humor thrives on the gap between how things should be and how they actually are. The Greeks might not have had Twitter, but they'd instantly recognize the vibe of a viral meme, roasting self-important influencers, or a parody account skewering corporate jargon. The masks have changed, but the play's the same. So the next time you groan at a joke about your overpriced mechanic or roll your eyes at a politician's empty promise, remember, you're part of a tradition stretching back to the very first time someone looked at an expert and thought, "Yeah, right." Some truths are just too funny to die. Even the great Aristotle, the man who literally wrote the book on logic, wasn't above a good philosophical gag. One of the sharpest surviving jokes from ancient Greece plays with reasoning itself. Question: why did the chicken cross the road? Answer: to get to the other side. But is the other side truly reachable, or merely a conceptual construct? At first, it sounds like pretentious nonsense, and that's exactly the point. This is humor with layers, poking fun at philosophers who could debate the meaning of meaning for hours. What makes this joke timeless isn't just the wordplay, it's the self-awareness. Think about modern nerdy humor, a math meme that turns a simple equation into an existential crisis, or a programmer joking about how "hello world" might be the only human interaction they'll have all week. The punchlines land because they celebrate and mock the quirks of intellectual culture simultaneously. The ancient Greeks were doing the same thing, laughing at their own tendency to overanalyze everything, from chicken migrations to the nature of reality. And let's be honest, academia hasn't lost that self-deprecating edge. Scroll through academic Twitter today, and you'll find historians roasting their own niche research topics or physicists turning quantum theory into absurdist comedy. The format's evolved, tweets instead of papyrus, emojis instead of carved stones, but the spirit's identical. Intellectuals have always used humor as both armor and connection, a way to say, "Yeah, we know how ridiculous this looks to outsiders." Now shift gears to another universal punchline, love. A Greek joke scrawled on a shard of pottery goes like this. A man tells his friend, "My wife's so beautiful, even Aphrodite would be jealous." The friend replies, "Then why do you spend every night at the tavern?" The setup feels ripped from a modern rom-com, someone bragging about their perfect relationship while their actions tell different story. What's striking is how little romantic humor has changed. The ancients roasted overbearing mothers-in-law, partners who snored like drunken cyclopes, and the agony of unrequited crushes. Sound familiar? Swap tavern for gaming console or Aphrodite for Instagram model. And these jokes could have been written yesterday, but here's the twist: these punchlines weren't just for laughs. They were social commentary, exposing the gap between idealized love and messy reality. In societies where marriages were often political or economic arrangements, jokes became a safe way to acknowledge dissatisfaction. Fast forward to today, and stand-up specials still dissect dating apps, mismatched libidos, and the myth of happily ever after. The targets have updated, but the tension between what love should be and what it actually is remains comedy gold. So whether it's philosophers overthinking poultry or lovers underperforming their own hype, these jokes prove one thing: human nature's greatest punchline might just be our refusal to ever change. A Babylonian tablet from around 1500 BCE cracks a joke that would feel right at home in a modern sitcom, proof that marital mistrust is truly timeless. The setup goes like this: a man comes home early and finds another pair of sandals by the bed. His wife, quick on her feet, says, "Don't be silly, those are yours." The punchline: "But I'm already wearing mine." Cue the laugh track from 4,000 years ago. This isn't just ancient slapstick, it's a window into the private anxieties of Babylonian marriages. In a society where women had limited rights and infidelity could carry brutal consequences, humor became a way to air those tensions safely. The joke's brilliance lies in its simplicity: the wife's flimsy excuse, the husband's deadpan realization, the universal dread of being caught in a lie. Fast forward to today, and you'll find the same dynamic in every episode of The Honeymooners or Modern Family. The same bumbling lies, the same exaggerated denials. What makes these jokes endure? For starters, they tap into a fundamental power imbalance. In Babylon, as in many ancient cultures, wives were often economically dependent on husbands, making infidelity a high-stakes gamble. The humor lets audiences laugh at the chaos without confronting the real-world consequences. Today, even as gender dynamics shift, the trope persists because it plays on a deeper truth. Trust is fragile, and the rituals of deception are often absurdly transparent. But here's the twist: these jokes aren't just about suspicion, they're about the thrill of the game. The Babylonian tablet doesn't end with the husband's rage. It lingers on the wife's audacious bluff, turning her into a kind of anti-hero. It's the same energy that makes I Love Lucy's scheming or Brooklyn Nine-Nine's elaborate cover-up so addictive. We're not just laughing at the lie, we're rooting for it, reveling in the sheer creativity of human deceit. And then there's the elephant in the room, or rather, the sandals. Why is infidelity humor so universally appealing? Maybe because it's the ultimate equalizer. Kings and peasants, ancient and modern, no one's immune to the fear of betrayal. A Roman graffito jokes about a wife sneaking out while her husband counts coins in the forum, and a medieval French farce features a lover hiding in a barrel. The details change, but the punchline stays the same. Love makes fools of us all. Now, shift from the bedroom to the bathroom, because if there's one thing that unites every civilization's sense of humor, it's bodily functions. A Sumerian proverb puts it bluntly: the king may rule the land, but the stomach rules the king. From fart jokes in ancient Egypt to Roman graffiti mocking public bathhouse habits, scatological humor has always been the great democratic equalizer. After all, nobody's dignified on the toilet. What's fascinating is how these lowbrow gags served the same purpose across cultures. In rigid hierarchies, where emperors demanded worship and priests preached purity, laughter at the body's messiness was a quiet rebellion. When a Greek playwright has a god slip on a banana peel or a medieval scribe doodles a monk mooning the audience, they're reminding us, no matter how high you climb, you're still human. Today's meme culture proves the tradition's alive, and well, think of South Park's relentless gross-out gags or viral tweets about office bathroom etiquette. The packaging's slicker, but the catharsis is identical. Whether etched in cuneiform or shared as a GIF, these jokes whisper the same truth. In the end, we're all just bags of embarrassing fluids, trying desperately to pretend otherwise. The Romans, masters of engineering and empire building, were also connoisseurs of the crass, especially when it came to public baths. One surviving graffito from Pompeii's latrines reads, "He who writes on walls defecates fears." At first glance, it's just bathroom graffiti mocking bathroom graffiti, a meta joke that would feel at home in a college dorm. But peel back the layers and you'll find something profound. The recognition that humor about bodily functions isn't just about shock value, it's about confronting the absurdity of being human. Public baths were the great equalizers of Roman society. Senators and slaves stripped naked together, sharing space with echoing farts and questionable hygiene. It's no wonder the jokes flourished here. One popular quip involved a bathgoer complaining about the smell, only to be told, "Then stop breathing." The punchline works because it flips the script. The real offense isn't the stench, but the audacity to complain about it in a place where everyone's equally vulnerable. Fast forward to Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, where the miller's fart-fueled storytelling scandalizes the pilgrims, or South Park's entire oeuvre of toilet humor, and the pattern holds. The more a society polices propriety, the harder laughter punches back. Taboos are comedy's jet fuel. In cultures where bodies, especially elite bodies, were supposed to project dignity and control, jokes about uncontrollable flatulence or desperate dashes to the latrine became acts of rebellion. The ancient Egyptian tale of the shipwrecked sailor includes a moment where a terrified sailor literally pisses himself in fear, undercutting the story's heroic tone. Medieval monks doodled bare-bottomed caricatures in the margins of holy texts. Even the Bible's Book of Kings mocks a dignitary who steps into a latrine and disappears into the earth, a euphemism so dark it's almost punk rock. But why does this brand of humor persist? Because it weaponizes shame's greatest weakness, universality. No amount of wealth or power can silence a grumbling stomach during a silent prayer or prevent a sneeze from becoming something messier. These jokes remind us that beneath the robes and crowns, we're all just animals trying and failing to maintain decorum. Now, shift from the scatological to the existential. If bathroom jokes mock the body's frailty, Gallows' humor tackles the ultimate human joke, mortality itself. The Romans had a saying, memento mori, remember you must die, but they also had jokes about it. One epitaph reads, "I wasn't, I was, I'm not, I don't care." It's the ancient equivalent of a shrugged meh in the face of oblivion. This isn't nihilism, it's defiance. Viking sagas crack wise about warriors who died as they lived badly. Medieval jesters performed skits where death himself slipped on a banana peel. Even the plague years spawned jokes like the Italian quip, "What's the difference between a doctor and the Grim Reaper? The Reaper only kills you once." These punchlines aren't just coping mechanisms, they're tiny acts of courage, turning the ultimate terror into something laughable. What ties these threads together, from Roman bathhouses to Monty Python's Bring Out Your Dead, is humor's power to domesticate the undignified. Whether it's a body's betrayal or life's brevity, laughter doesn't just lighten the load, it reminds us we're not alone in the mess. The ancients knew this truth instinctively. To joke about what scares us is to rob it of its power. And that's a punchline that never gets old. An Athenian joke carved into a tombstone delivers Mortality's punchline with perfect dark comedy timing. Here lies Philocrates, who died at 28. The good die young, but don't worry, he wasn't that good. At first glance, it's a cheeky epitaph, but there's something startlingly modern about its tone, the way it undercuts solemnity with a wink, turning grief into something you can laugh with rather than just cry about. This wasn't just one edgy stonecutter's work. Graveyard humor thrived in ancient Greece, where tombstones routinely featured jokes about bad debts. Finally, he's paid in full. Marital relief, now her nagging echoes in Hades. Or even occupational hazards, a fisherman, even in death, still smells like one. These weren't just provocations, they were psychological armor. In societies where life expectancy hovered around 30 and plagues could erase entire families in a week, laughter became a way to stare down the abyss without crumbling. Sound familiar? Scroll through today's memes about adulting or existential dread, and you'll see the same coping mechanism at work. The format's changed. Instead of chiseled stone, we've got viral tweets like "me dying, delete my browser history." But the impulse is identical. When reality's too heavy, humor lightens the load. The Greeks even had a term for it, gelatopoia, the art of laughing at what terrifies you. Philosophers like Epicurus used jokes to demystify death, arguing that fearing it was as silly as fearing the time before you were born. What's fascinating is how these ancient jokes mirror modern gallows humor across cultures. Viking sagas reveled in warriors quipping about Valhalla's buffet mid-battle. Medieval dance macabre art showed skeletons yanking nobles into graves with a smirk. Even the Black Death spawned jokes like the Italian street performer who wore a plague doctor mask while singing. You might die tomorrow, but today the wine's half price. Parallels to today's pandemic memes, day 12 of quarantine, my couch has a dent shaped like me, are uncanny. But here's the twist, these jokes weren't just about deflection. They were acts of defiance. By laughing at death, people reclaimed agency over something no one controls. A Roman mosaic shows a skeleton holding wine cups with the caption, "Drink up, you'll end up like me someday." It's not nihilism, it's liberation. The message, if we're all just future bones, might as well enjoy the ride. Now, pivot from mortality to another ancient anxiety, superstition, where humor took aim at the rituals people clung to for comfort. A Greek joke from the 4th century BCE goes, "Why did the soothsayer refuse to predict his own future? Because if it was bad, he'd look like a fraud, and if it was good, he'd die of shock." The punchline cuts deep, mocking the very idea of control in an unpredictable world. It's the same energy as modern horoscope roasts Pisces. Today you'll cry over a sandwich. Wait, that's just you every day. Or memes about manifesting while doom scrolling. The through line is clear. Whether facing death or fortune tellers, ancient humor reminds us that laughter isn't just escapism, it's survival. And sometimes the oldest jokes still hit the hardest. A medieval jest from a 15th century German manuscript delivers a masterclass in skewering superstition. A man sees a black cat cross his path and immediately falls to his knees, begging God to reverse the omen. A priest walks by and says, "Fool, the cat was going left. That means good luck. If you'd just waited, you'd have seen the rabbit holding a horseshoe." The joke's genius lies in its layers. It mocks not just the man's fear of omens, but the priest's equally absurd attempt to rationalize them. Even in an age where the church dominated daily life, people were rolling their eyes at blind faith in signs and portents. This wasn't just idle mockery, it was a quiet act of rebellion. In societies where accusing someone of heresy could mean a death sentence, humor became a safe way to question authority. The joke structure is timeless. It takes something feared, a bad omen, exaggerates it to absurdity, the hypothetical lucky rabbit, and lets the audience laugh at their own anxieties. Fast forward to today, and you'll find the same formula in memes mocking flat earthers or late-night bits about politicians blaming ancient prophecies for their scandals. The targets shift, but the punchline stays the same. Fear thrives in the gaps of logic, and laughter floods those gaps with light. What's fascinating is how these jokes reveal skepticism flourishing even in deeply religious eras. A 14th century French farce features a farmer who refuses to plant crops because the stars aren't right, only to starve while waiting for perfect constellations. The moral, blind faith in invisible forces won't feed you. Compare that to modern satire about anti-vaxxers ignoring doctors for YouTube algorithms, and the parallel is uncanny. Both punchlines hinge on the same truth. When ideology clashes with survival, humor becomes the crowbar prying them apart. Now, shift from omens to animals, because if there's one thing every culture's jokes agree on, it's that beasts are hilarious proxies for human folly. A Babylonian tablet from 3,000 years ago features a donkey complaining to a camel about his heavy load, only for the camel to reply, "At least you're not the one getting ridden into battle." It's a workplace gripe disguised as barnyard banter, proving that anthropomorphic humor is older than written language. The ancients loved turning creatures into caricatures. Greek fables mocked politicians as squawking crows. Egyptian papyri depicted lazy scribes as napping cats, and Norse sagas portrayed gods as bickering livestock. These jokes worked because they let people critique power structures without naming names. A fox stealing from a henhouse could stand in for a corrupt tax collector, and everyone knew it. Today's political cartoons still use the same shorthand, whether it's bears in SUITS Chinese letter ING world leaders or pigeons debating economic policy. But animal humor also reveals something tender about our relationship with nature. A medieval Irish joke tells of a wolf who befriends a monk, only to complain that the man's prayers are keeping him awake. The punchline: the wolf starts howling psalms. It's silly, but beneath the laughter lies a recognition. We're not so different from the creatures we fear or dominate. Whether it's Babylonian donkeys or viral videos of dogs talking, humor reminds us that intelligence and absurdity aren't uniquely human traits. So the next time you chuckle at a meme about cats plotting world domination or a conspiracy theory about lizard people, remember, you're part of a tradition that stretches back to the very first time someone looked at a sheep and thought, "That's basically my landlord." Some truths are just funnier when they're wearing fur. One of the oldest surviving jokes from ancient India stars an unlikely comedian, a talking donkey with serious opinions. Recorded in the Panchatantra, a collection of fables dating back to 200 BCE, the joke goes like this. A donkey, tired of his owner's constant beatings, prays to the gods for a new master. They grant his wish by selling him to a brickmaker. Now, instead of carrying light loads, he's hauling heavy clay all day. When he complains, the gods shrug. You asked for change, not improvement. At first glance, it's a classic fable about being careful what you wish for, but the real punchline is darker and far more human. The donkey isn't just a stand-in for animal welfare. He's every underpaid worker who's ever cursed their boss, only to realize the next one's worse. The joke lands because it uses an animal's plight to mirror a universal truth. Power structures rarely change, even when the faces do. It's the same satirical edge you'll find in Aesop's The Ass and His Masters or Orwell's Animal Farm. Animals as furry, four-legged proxies for human struggles. What makes creatures like this donkey such enduring comedy gold? For starters, they let us laugh at hard truths without feeling targeted. A Greek fable about a fox outsmarting a lion feels less threatening than a joke about peasants overthrowing a king, but the subtext is identical. Animals also embody exaggerated traits we recognize in ourselves. The sly fox, the stubborn mule, the pompous peacock. Modern animated shows like BoJack Horseman or Zootopia run on this same fuel, using animal archetypes to explore addiction, prejudice, or office politics with just enough distance to keep it funny. But the Panchatantra donkey also hints at another ancient comedy staple, wealth inequality. A later Indian joke features a camel mocking a rich merchant. "You boast about your gold, but my hump holds enough water to cross a desert. Try drinking your coins when you're thirsty." The punchline cuts deep in a society where caste and class were rigidly enforced. Like the donkey, the camel becomes a mouthpiece for the voiceless, using humor to flip the script on privilege. Fast forward to today, and you'll find the same dynamic in memes comparing billionaires to hoarding dragons, or cartoons where rats critique capitalism from dumpsters. Whether it's a 2,000-year-old donkey or a viral tweet about "eat the rich," animals keep giving us permission to laugh at the absurdity of inequality, one bray, growl, or tweet at a time. A Persian joke from the 13th century cuts to the heart of greed with surgical precision. A miser on his deathbed summons his son. "Listen carefully," he whispers, "I've hidden my gold under there," and dies mid-sentence. The son spends the rest of his life digging up every inch of their land, only to grow rich from the crops he planted in the disturbed soil. The punchline isn't just about wasted effort, it's a scalpel slicing open the irony of wealth obsession. The old man's hoarding creates poverty, while the son's accidental labor brings abundance. This isn't just a medieval zinger, it's a mirror held up to our own era's wealth disparities. Swap hidden gold for offshore accounts or dug up land for side hustles, and the joke could headline a modern satire site. The ancients understood what today's meme culture knows too. Economic inequality is comedy's oxygen. Roman graffiti mocked landlords who charged for shadows, while Edo period Japanese plays featured merchants so stingy they sold their own breath to save on food. The specifics change, but the target stays the same: power hoarded at the top. What makes greed such a timeless punchline? It's the disconnect between wealth and worth. A Babylonian tablet jokes about a rich man who counts his coins but forgets to count his friends, while a medieval German just features a banker so paranoid he sleeps with his vault key clenched in his teeth and chokes on it. These aren't just gags, they're social pressure valves, letting ordinary people laugh at forces they can't control. Fast forward to today, and you'll find Twitter threads roasting billionaire space races or TikTok skits about eating the rich, same catharsis, different platforms. But here's the twist: these jokes often reveal more about the tellers than the targets. The Persian miser's tale ends with the son's accidental success, hinting at a quiet optimism that even in unjust systems, resourcefulness can win. Compare that to a modern meme like, "If I can't afford rent, maybe I'll just become a diamond-encrusted skeleton for future archaeologists." Both use absurdity to mask resilience, turning despair into something survivable, even laughable. Now shift from gold to grammar, because nothing tickled ancient funny bones like linguistic chaos. A Sanskrit joke from 5th century India plays with translation mishaps. A scholar asks for peace in every language, only to realize he's actually saying turnip in half of them. The humor here isn't just about mix-ups, it's about the fragility of meaning itself. In an era when multilingual empires collided, language was both bridge and battleground. The Romans loved this brand of meta humor too. One graffito in Pompeii mocks a bad Latin tutor. He claims to teach clarity, but his students can't even spell confusion. It's the ancient equivalent of roasting Duolingo's owl for questionable phrases. These jokes work because they expose the gap between authority and actual skill, whether it's a grammarian botching verbs or a modern influencer misusing literally. What ties greed jokes and grammar gags together is their shared target, pretense. The miser pretending his gold brings happiness. The scholar pretending language is fixed both get punctured by laughter. And that's the ultimate punchline. No matter how seriously we take our systems, whether economic or linguistic, humor reminds us they're all just human inventions. Flimsy, flawed, and occasionally hilarious. A Byzantine emperor once hosted a delegation from a distant land, and the court jester decided to help by translating their greetings. What followed was pure chaos. The jester turned a friendly, "we bring gifts of peace," into "we bring armored rats," sending the palace into a panic until someone realized the mistake. The joke wasn't just about the mix-up, it was about the fragile illusion of understanding, the way language can twist even the simplest intentions. This 1,000-year-old gag feels ripped from a modern meme page. Think about Google Translate fails turning "I'm allergic to peanuts" into "I am death to peanuts," or that viral tweet where someone's romantic "good night" message in Spanish autocorrected to "good night, large potato." The mechanics of humor haven't changed because laughter thrives on the gap between what we mean and what actually comes out. But here's the deeper punchline. These jokes only work when the audience shares enough context to get the mistake. The Byzantine court laughed because they knew both languages. Today's mistranslation memes go viral because we've all suffered autocorrect disasters. Humor is a cultural handshake, a silent agreement about what's normal and what's absurdly out of place. A medieval French farce mocks a knight's terrible Latin by having him confuse holy sword with salty fish, but it only lands if you've heard enough Latin to spot the blunder. Yet some comedy needs no translation at all. Enter Slapstick, the universal language of pratfalls and pie fights. A Roman mosaic shows a man slipping on a banana peel, or its ancient equivalent, an olive. No words needed. Whether it's a Byzantine jester tripping over his own robe or Buster Keaton's deadpan tumbles, the body's betrayal transcends vocabulary. That's why silent films could cross borders long before subtitles. A well-timed stumble speaks every dialect. What ties these threads together is humor's dual nature. It's both deeply cultural and stubbornly universal. We laugh at mistranslations because they expose how precarious communication really is, but we howl at slapstick because some truths are too primal for words. Either way, the joke's on us. No matter how advanced we get, we're all just one autocorrect away from chaos. The philosopher Thales of Miletus was so busy staring at the stars one night that he tumbled straight into a well. And according to legend, the servant girl who saw it laughed so hard she dropped her water jug. That ancient Greek anecdote isn't just history's first recorded blooper reel. It's proof that slapstick comedy was cracking people up millennia before Charlie Chaplin ever slipped on a banana peel. There's something deliciously human about watching brilliant minds or self-important figures get humbled by gravity. Whether it's a toga-clad thinker face planting in the dark or a modern professor tripping over their own PowerPoint cord, the spectacle of intellect colliding with physics never gets old. What makes pratfalls so universally hilarious? It's the great equalizer. No amount of wisdom can save you from a well-placed cobblestone. The Thales story plays on this beautifully. Here's a man who supposedly predicted solar eclipses and measured pyramids, yet he can't navigate a 3-foot-wide hole in broad daylight. The Greeks adored this contrast, using physical comedy to poke fun at ivory tower types who lose touch with earthly realities. Fast forward to Buster Keaton's stone-faced stunts or TikTok fails of influencers mid-strut meeting sidewalk, and the formula's identical. Ambition meets asphalt, and we can't look away. But here's the twist. These jokes aren't just about Schadenfreude. They're celebrations of resilience. When Thales climbs out of that well, dusts off his robes and deadpans, "Do you know how far that fall would have killed me?" Mathematically, the laughter shifts. Now we're not just laughing at his fall, but with his ability to spin it into a teachable moment. That's the secret sauce of enduring physical comedy. It lets us rehearse life's little disasters in a space where no one actually gets hurt. A Roman mosaic shows a drunk god slipping on wine spills. A medieval manuscript doodles a monk getting hit by his own swinging censer. A viral clip shows a dad backflipping off a porch into a bush. Different eras, same catharsis, watching others survive embarrassment so we believe we can too. Now shift from the physical to the meta, jokes about jokes. The Greeks were pioneers here too. One surviving quip features a comedian who opens his set with, "This next bit always kills in Athens, shame we're in Sparta." It's a joke about audience expectations, a fourth wall break that would feel right at home in a modern stand-up special. Or consider the Roman playwright Plautus, who had characters complain about tired comedy tropes while enacting those very tropes. The humor here isn't in the fall, but in winking at the scaffolding that makes us expect the fall. Today's meme culture runs on this same self-awareness. TikTok's POV, "You're about to faceplant," trend, or YouTube's epic fail compilations don't just show spills. They frame them with dramatic zooms and sad trombone sounds, heightening the artifice. It's Thales well with a laugh track, and that's the real through line. Whether carved on a Greek vase or shared as a reaction gif, physical comedy endures because it reminds us that grace is overrated. And sometimes, the best way to handle life's tripwires is to pick yourself up and take a bow. A Roman joke scrawled on a tavern wall in Pompeii delivers a punchline that would feel right at home in today's comedy clubs. A comedian walks into a bar and immediately starts rewriting his set. At first glance, it's a simple gag about creative insecurity, but there's something brilliantly self-aware lurking beneath. This isn't just a joke, it's a joke about joke-making, a meta-commentary on the eternal struggle to land the perfect laugh. What makes this ancient quip so timeless is its layers. The comedian isn't just the butt of the joke, he's also its architect, trapped in an endless loop of self-doubt and revision. Sound familiar? Fast forward to modern open mic nights, where you'll find performers agonizing over syllable choices in their punchlines or panicking when a bit that killed in Brooklyn bombs in Boston. The specifics have changed, scrolls replaced by notes apps, taverns by comedy sellers, but the creative anxiety remains identical. This cyclical nature of humor reveals something profound. Comedy doesn't just reflect culture, it feeds on its own history. The Roman jester complaining about hecklers in togas mirrors today's stand-ups roasting audience members for texting mid-set. Even the structure of jokes echoes across millennia. The classic rule of three setup, think a priest, a rabbi, and a duck walk into a bar, appears in both Roman graffiti and Netflix specials. It's as if humor operates on a spiral, revisiting the same human foibles with fresh coats of cultural paint. Yet for all these universal rhythms, regional flavors still punch through. That same Pompeii joke takes on new shades when you compare it to, say, an ancient Egyptian quip about Pharaoh's court jesters where the stakes weren't just laughs, but literal life or death. While Roman humor reveled in bawdy wordplay and class satire, Egyptian comedy often leaned on physical slapstick and divine absurdity. Picture a god tripping over his own ceremonial beard. The differences weren't accidental, they mapped onto societal values. Rome's Republican snark flourished in its wine-soaked tavern debates, while Egypt's hierarchical system turned humor into a survival skill. Mock the gods too directly, and you might join them in the afterlife. These regional quirks persist today. British humor's dry understatement would baffle a fan of Brazilian comedy's carnivalesque energy, just as Japanese man's-eye duo's rapid-fire banter plays differently than American improv's yes and philosophy. But beneath the stylistic divides, the core impulse remains to expose life's contradictions through laughter. Whether carved on a Roman wall or tweeted into the void, the best jokes remind us that human nature, like comedy itself, is endlessly recyclable yet stubbornly local. The Nile and the Tiber might both be legendary rivers, but the jokes that flowed from their shores couldn't have been more different. Take an Egyptian pun from the time of the pharaohs. Why did the scribe bring a ladder to work? Because his hieroglyphs were over his head. Contrast that with a Roman graffito found in Pompeii. The magistrate so full of himself, even his shadow bows when he walks. One's a playful word game, the other a razor-sharp jabber, and that divide tells us everything about how humor molds itself to cultural values. The Egyptians reveled in puns and riddles, weaving humor into the very fabric of their sacred texts. A papyrus from Thebes features a god joking about his own creation myth. I made the Nile flood so high this year, even the crocodiles needed boats. It's whimsical, layered, and deeply tied to their worldview where gods could be mischievous and language itself held magical power. Wordplay wasn't just entertainment, it was a way to honor the complexity of their hieroglyphic script, where a single symbol could mean three things at once. Even their tomb inscriptions included jokes, ensuring the afterlife came with a chuckle. Now, cross the Mediterranean to Rome, where sarcasm dripped like cheap wine at a plebeian feast. The Romans didn't just mock authority, they dissected it with surgical precision. Consider this gem scratched into a bathhouse wall. The senator's speech was so long, even the sundial fell asleep. Where Egyptian humor danced around meaning, Roman jokes aimed straight for the jugular. The difference wasn't just stylistic, it reflected their societies. Egypt's stable, theocratic state favored humor that reinforced cosmic order, while Rome's cutthroat politics bred wit as sharp as a gladiator's sword. Geography shaped comedy as much as culture. In dense, urban Rome, where citizens jostled in forums and bathhouses, humor thrived on immediacy, quick, biting observations about the guy cutting in line for bread or the landlord raising rents again. Meanwhile, Egypt's humor often revolved around the natural world, floods, harvests, and animals mirroring their agrarian rhythms. A Roman wouldn't crack a joke about ibises nesting. An Egyptian wouldn't waste breath mocking tax collectors, though they did roast lazy bureaucrats in papyrus cartoons. But here's where these ancient laugh lines converge: crisis. When Mount Vesuvius buried Pompeii, survivors scribbled jokes on salvaged walls. Here lies Marcus, who died fleeing. Jokes on him we all did. Similarly, during a Nile drought, an Egyptian scribe penned, "The gods must be thirsty, they drank the river first." In the face of disaster, humor became a lifeline for both cultures, proving that laughter isn't just shaped by society, it's how societies survive. Whether etched in ash or inked on papyrus, these punchlines whisper the same truth. Mockery can be defiance, and a shared laugh might just be the sturdiest bridge across millennia. The streets of 14th century Europe were haunted by silence, emptied by the Black Death, punctuated only by the rattle of death carts. Yet in the shadows, laughter still flickered. A joke scrawled on a monastery wall captures the era's bleak humor. What's the difference between a priest and the plague? The priest takes longer to kill you. At first glance, it's a horrifying gag, but beneath the surface lies something extraordinary, proof that even in history's darkest corridors, humans will mine comedy from catastrophe. This macabre punchline isn't just shock value, it's survival. When mortality rates hit 60% and social order crumbled, humor became one of the few things people could still control. The joke's targets corrupt clergy. Slow-moving institutions reflect the rage of communities abandoned by those meant to protect them. Fast forward to 2020, memes comparing toilet paper hoarders to Armageddon preppers, or Zoom meetings to dystopian nightmares, and the pattern holds. Pandemics change, but the human reflex to laugh through them doesn't. What makes disaster humor so universally irresistible? Psychologists call it benign violation, the act of acknowledging terror while neutralizing its sting. Medieval plague jokes often featured dancing skeletons or drunken gravediggers, turning unthinkable loss into something manageable. Today's equivalent might be TikTok skits about quarantine hair or tweets like, "Day 10 of isolation, my plants are starting to judge me." The medium evolves, but the mechanism stays the same. Laughter as a life raft in choppy waters. Now, shift from collective trauma to a more intimate battleground at gender roles, where ancient jokes reveal surprisingly modern tensions. A 15th century German jestbook features a wife telling her husband, "You want me silent in church, then stop snoring through my sermons at home." The punchline lands because it flips the script on power dynamics, giving the marginalized a mic to clap back. Compare that to Renaissance Italy's beffa tradition, where women publicly shamed abusive husbands through satirical songs, or ancient Greek comedies where housewives outsmarted philosophers. These aren't just gags, they're historical receipts proving that #MeToo moments existed long before hashtags. Yet for every subversive zinger, there were 1,000 lazy stereotypes. Roman graffiti reduced women to shrews or gold diggers, while medieval fabliaux painted men as bumbling cuckolds. The difference between then and now. Today's comedians have the tools and the responsibility to punch up rather than down. When a medieval jester mocked a wife's nagging, it reinforced oppression. When Hannah Gadsby deconstructs masculinity in Nanette, it dismantles it. The jokes might target similar foibles, but the arrow's direction changes everything. So whether it's plague humor helping us face mortality or gender jabs exposing societal fractures, these ancient punchlines remind us, comedy isn't just about laughter. It's about who gets the last laugh and why. A medieval manuscript from England delivers a punchline that wouldn't feel out of place in a modern stand-up routine. A wife hides her husband's favorite drinking horn, so he retaliates by misplacing her house keys for 7 years. The joke's genius lies in its escalation. What starts as petty domestic squabbling turns into a passive-aggressive marathon. At first glance, it's just a battle of the sexes gag, but peel back the layers and you'll find something deeper. Proof that couples have been weaponizing humor to navigate power struggles for centuries. Why do gender dynamics make such enduring comedy fodder? Because they're the ultimate pressure cooker of human relationships, intimacy, and irritation sharing the same cramped space. The medieval joke works for the same reason a Everybody Loves Raymond episode does. It exaggerates real tensions to the point of absurdity. The horn-hiding wife mirrors today's memes about partners accidentally breaking video game controllers, while the key-hoarding husband anticipates every viral tweet about husbands forgetting anniversary dates. The specifics change, tankards become TikTok, but the underlying truth remains. Love and friction are inseparable, and laughter lets us air grievances without drawing blood. What's fascinating is how these jokes reflect shifting societal norms. Compare that medieval jest to a 15th century German quip where a wife publicly shames her abusive husband with a satirical song. The first is about mutual annoyance, the second is outright rebellion. Fast forward to today, and you'll see comedians like Ollie Wong joking about the mental load of motherhood, or Nate Bargatze's bits about clueless dads. The targets have evolved from generic nagging to systemic inequities, but the core remains using humor to spotlight imbalances too uncomfortable to confront head-on. Now shift from marital spats to another universal punchline, aging. A Renaissance Italian joke features an old man boasting, "I've still got the vigor of a 20-year-old." His wife deadpans, "Yes, dear, the same 20-year-old who still lives in our basement." It's a gag that would kill at any modern retirement home bingo night. The humor here isn't just about vanity. It's about the surreal disconnect between how we feel inside and what the mirror insists is true. Ancient cultures loved poking fun at this paradox. Roman graffiti mocked balding men who combed clouds over their heads, while Egyptian papyri joked about elders whose backs bent like question marks from answering too many. Today's equivalents, memes about dad jeans or millennials groaning when they stand up. The through line is unmistakable. Time humbles everyone, and laughing about it takes the sting out. Whether carved on a medieval tavern wall or hashtagged on Instagram, these jokes are less about mocking age than celebrating survival, proof that growing older is funnier when you're not doing it alone. A Renaissance joke scribbled in the margin of a Florentine ledger cuts to the heart of aging with brutal elegance. An old man buys a mirror for the first time in 40 years, then returns it the next day, complaining, "The frame is lovely, but the portrait inside is ruined." At first glance, it's a simple jab at vanity, but the real punchline is darker. It's about the shock of confronting time. Irreversible work. The joke lands because it plays on a universal dread. That moment when you realize the face in the mirror no longer matches the one in your memory. What's fascinating is how little this humor has changed. Replace the mirror with a smartphone's unforgiving front camera, and the joke could be ripped from a modern, "okay, boomer" meme. Today's generational humor might package it differently. Gen Z roasts about Chuji, fashion, or TikTok trends like aging filter reactions, but the target remains identical: the gap between how we see ourselves and how the world sees us. The Renaissance joked about balding men wearing hats indoors. We've got millennials crying over untaggable birthday photos. The delivery evolves, but the existential crisis is timeless. Yet there's a crucial difference in tone. That Florentine joke carries a wistful resignation. The old man doesn't rage against the mirror, but sighs at inevitability. Compare that to today's generational battlegrounds, where boomer humor often mocks younger snowflakes, while Gen Z claps back with "okay, grandpa" memes about outdated views. The divide isn't just about age, it's about control. Renaissance laughter accepted time's cruelty as fate, while modern generational humor weaponizes it as critique. Boomers clinging to relevance, Zoomers mocking the attempt. Now shift from wrinkles to another universal laugh trigger, food. A medieval German jest book features a peasant who brags, "My wife's stew is so thick, the spoon stands upright." Only for his friend to reply, "That's not stew, that's last week's bread." The joke works because it turns scarcity into a punchline, much like today's viral struggle meals or college student hacks like ramen al dente. Whether it's Renaissance peasants stretching ingredients or millennials joking about avocado toast budgets, food humor always thrives on the tension between creativity and desperation. What ties these threads together is humor's ability to alchemize struggle into solidarity. The old man's mirror, the generational spat, the dubious stew, they're all reminders that laughter doesn't just deflect pain, it redistributes it, making life's indignities feel communal rather than cruel. And that's a recipe that never goes stale. A banquet hall in ancient China erupts in chaos when a visiting official accidentally knocks over an entire tureen of shark fin soup onto the host's lap. The guest freezes in horror, but instead of fury, the room dissolves into laughter. The host, dripping with broth, quips, "At least now we know the soup's not poisoned. If it were, I'd be dead by now." This 1,000-year-old joke, preserved in a Tang Dynasty jestbook, isn't just about spilled soup. It's a masterclass in turning social disaster into communal relief. The punchline works because it acknowledges the tension, the rigid etiquette of Chinese banquets, where every gesture carried political weight, then punctures it with absurdity. Fast forward to today, and the DNA of this joke lives on in viral cooking fail videos. A TikTok of a collapsed souffle garners millions of views, not because it's perfect, but because it's gloriously imperfect. The comments section fills with variations of, "Well, now it's a pancake breakfast is served," just as the Tang Dynasty guests rallied around their humiliated host. The parallels are uncanny. Whether it's a 9th century nobleman or a 21st century home chef, food disasters become funniest when they're shared. There's something deeply human about laughing at culinary calamities, maybe because hunger is universal, but so is the struggle to tame it. What makes food such a potent conduit for cross-cultural humor? It's the ultimate equalizer. A Sumerian tablet jokes about a burnt offering that smelled so bad even the gods held their noses, while a medieval French farce features a pilgrim mistaking rancid stew for holy penance. Every culture has its version of the disastrous dinner party trope, because every culture negotiates the same precarious balance between hospitality and humiliation. Modern sitcoms from Frasier's tossed salads to the Bear's kitchen meltdowns prove the formula hasn't aged a day. Food preparation is high-stakes theater, and when the curtain falls, laughter is the best damage control. Now shift from the dining table to the workplace, where occupational humor thrives on the same combustible mix of pride and pratfall. A Han Dynasty joke features a magistrate's clerk who, after transposing 2 characters in a legal document, turns a death sentence into a decree that the prisoner must marry the emperor's favorite goat. The punchline lands because it plays on universal workplace dread, the tiny mistake with catastrophic consequences. Today's equivalents, memes about sending reply all emails to the entire company or coding errors that accidentally bankrupted the startup. The stakes may have evolved from goat marriages to stock crashes, but the vein of humor remains identical, the fragile illusion of professional competence, always one typo away from unraveling. What ties these threads together, whether it's a Tang Dynasty soup fiasco or a Slack channel gone rogue, is humor's power to transform isolation into solidarity. The banquet blunder could have ended in disgrace, but the host's quick wit turned it into legend. The clerk's goat decree might have cost him his job, but as a joke, it outlived the empire. Laughter doesn't just lighten the load, it ensures no one has to carry it alone, and that's a recipe that never goes out of style. A Mesopotamian tablet from 4,000 years ago features a joke that would feel right at home in a modern workplace comedy. A blacksmith orders his apprentice to fetch a hammer, but the boy returns with a loaf of bread, claiming they look identical in the dark. At first glance, it's just a gag about incompetence, but there's something delightfully timeless about its rhythm. Swap the hammer for a stapler and the bread for a sandwich, and suddenly you've got an outtake from The Office where Kevin confuses the copier with the vending machine. Why does bumbling ineptitude make us laugh across millennia? Because it plays on a universal truth. Workplaces are pressure cookers of absurdity. The Mesopotamian joke works for the same reason Michael Scott's cringe-worthy meetings do. It exaggerates the gap between expectation and reality. We've all had that coworker who could misplace a spreadsheet in an empty drawer or send a company-wide email with "kind retards" instead of "kind regards." The humor isn't cruel, it's cathartic. Laughing at fictional incompetence lets us vent real frustrations without HR complaints. But here's the twist. Ancient craftsman jokes often carried a sharper edge than modern sitcoms. That blacksmith's apprentice wasn't just a goofball, he was a stand-in for systemic failures. In societies where a poorly forged plow could ruin a harvest or a loose chariot wheel could get a king killed, incompetence wasn't just funny, it was terrifying. The joke lets audiences laugh at that terror, diffusing it into something manageable. Today's equivalents might be Parks and Rec's Jerry, whose bumbling hides the bureaucracy's flaws, or Silicon Valley's programmers who can't code their way out of a paper bag. The stakes feel lower, but the subtext is identical. Systems are only as strong as their weakest link. Now, shift from hapless workers to the bosses who enable them, because no workplace comedy is complete without a clueless leader. A Roman joke etched into a Pompeii tavern wall reads, "The foreman insists the bridge is safe as he stands safely on shore." The punchline lands like a ton of bricks, echoing modern memes about CEOs urging return to office from their yachts. Hierarchical hypocrisy is comedy gold, whether it's a Mesopotamian supervisor blaming apprentices or David Brent from The Office claiming, "I'm a friend first, boss second, probably an entertainer third." What ties these threads together is satire's double blade. The jokes aren't just mocking individuals, they're exposing the absurdity of power structures themselves. When the blacksmith's apprentice gets promoted in later versions of the joke because his stupidity amuses the king, we're suddenly in Veep territory, where incompetence is rewarded if it's entertaining. It's a reminder that workplace humor isn't just about laughs, it's about survival. Whether you're a scribe in Babylon or a temp in Scranton, sometimes the only way to stay sane is to point at the chaos and say, "Can you believe this?" And when someone 4,000 years from now unearths a meme about your boss's nonsensical Zoom mandates, they'll probably laugh just as hard. The Roman poet Juvenal once wrote that under Emperor Nero's reign, it was safer to joke about the gods than the emperor's singing because at least the gods wouldn't send the Praetorian Guard to your door. That razor-sharp observation hides a darker truth. Humor has always been political dynamite, especially when aimed at tyrants. Take the infamous pumpkinification of Claudius, a satire written by Seneca the Younger. On the surface, it's a ridiculous farce about the late emperor being turned into a gourd after death. But between the lines, a scathing indictment of Nero's regime, mocking the absurdity of deifying corrupt rulers while barely disguising its targets. The joke wasn't just about Claudius, it was about the living emperor's growing megalomania, wrapped in layers of absurdity thick enough to hopefully avoid execution. This wasn't just ancient stand-up, it was survival. In a world where direct criticism meant death, satire became a linguistic Trojan horse. The pumpkinification didn't just make people laugh, it made them complicit. Every chuckle was a silent agreement that the emperor's divinity was as hollow as a dried-out squash. Fast forward to today, and you'll find the same coded rebellion in late-night monologues. When John Oliver compares a world leader to a sentient tanning bed malfunction, or Samantha Bee dubs a policy, the legislative equivalent of setting yourself on fire to own the libs, they're playing Seneca's game using exaggeration to expose truth while dodging outright libel. The stakes might be lower, no one's getting fed to lions for a Zuckerberg joke yet, but the mechanism is identical, absurdity as armor. What makes political humor so potent and dangerous is its ability to reframe power. A joke doesn't just mock, it demystifies. Nero's court poets knew this when they wrote verses about a certain lyre player whose music could level cities, wink, wink. By reducing tyranny to punchlines, they stripped it of grandeur. Modern comedians do the same when they turn press conferences into meme fodder or edit speeches into auto-tuned nonsense. The moment a leader becomes a laughingstock, their authority frays at the edges. Historians even speculate that Nero's eventual downfall was hastened by the empire-wide snickering about his terrible art, proof that laughter can be a slow-acting poison for dictators. But satire isn't the only weapon in humor's arsenal. Enter absurdism, the nuclear option for challenging authority. When reality itself becomes too oppressive to parody, comedians stop exaggerating and start dismantling. Ancient Rome had its Menippean satire, rambling, surreal dialogues where philosophers debated geese and rivers spouted nonsense, while today we've got Rick and Morty's interdimensional cable episodes or Tim Robinson's I Think You Should Leave, where logic collapses into glorious nonsense. The common thread: when systems are too corrupt to satirize coherently, absurdism becomes the last refuge of dissent. The through line from Seneca to Saturday Night Live is clearer than you'd think. Both prove that the most subversive jokes aren't the ones that make rulers angry, they're the ones that make them irrelevant. Whether it's a pumpkin emperor or a meme-ified oligarch, the goal remains: reduce the powerful to punchlines, and suddenly they're not so powerful anymore. A Celtic riddle carved into a stone pillar around the 5th century CE taunts us with its glorious nonsense. What is green hangs on a wall and whistles. The answer: there isn't one, that's the whole joke. At first glance, it feels like a prank, the ancient equivalent of a whoopee cushion left on a scholar's chair. But this absurdist gag isn't just random. It's a masterclass in anti-humor, proving that sometimes the punchline is the sheer audacity of there being no punchline at all. What makes nonsense so perversely funny? It's the ultimate subversion of expectations. Our brains are wired to seek patterns, to solve puzzles. So when a riddle dangles the promise of meaning only to snatch it away, the cognitive whiplash becomes comedy. This Celtic joke plays the same trick as modern anti-jokes, like two muffins are in an oven. One says, "It's hot in here." The other screams, "Ah, a talking muffin." The humor isn't in the content, it's in the betrayal of form. Medieval bards used these riddle gags to poke fun at the very tradition of wisdom-seeking, as if to say, "You want profundity? Here's a green whistling wall, good luck with that." And here's where we spot the DNA of today's dad jokes, those cringe-worthy one-liners that thrive on the same deliberate absurdity. Why can't you trust an atom? Because they make up everything isn't just a bad joke, it's a direct descendant of that ancient Celtic riddle. Both rely on the same formula: setup, anticipation, then a payoff so ludicrous it loops back to brilliance. The difference: where the Celtic riddle leans into existential shrugs, dad jokes weaponize puns, but the spirit of playful pointlessness remains untouched by time. Now pivot from whimsy to weaponized nonsense, parody. The Celts weren't the only ones wielding absurdity as a cultural scalpel. In medieval Ireland, poets crafted nonsense verses, mocking the flowery excesses of aristocratic praise poetry. Imagine a bard earnestly declaring a king's beard, so majestic seagulls nest in it. The satire here is razor-sharp. By amplifying the ridiculousness of conventional flattery, these parodies exposed its emptiness. Fast forward to modern SNL sketches or YouTube parody songs, and the technique's identical. Exaggerator forms tropes until they collapse under their own weight. But here's the twist: the green whistling wall isn't just a joke. It's a tiny act of rebellion. In societies where druids and bards held serious cultural power, nonsense riddles gently undermined the authority of official wisdom. Today's meme culture does the same. Think of surrealist gems like Bone Apple Tea or I Am Become Corn, where language itself becomes a playground. Whether carved on a stone or shared as a viral tweet, absurdity reminds us that meaning is fragile and laughter often lives in the cracks. Buried in the ruins of an ancient Greek symposium, there's a joke that would make Mel Brooks proud. A mock epic tale where Odysseus, the legendary hero of the Odyssey, gets stranded on an island of bad buffet food. The punchline: after surviving sirens and cyclopes, he's finally defeated by a suspiciously gelatinous lamb stew. This isn't just a throwaway gag. It's one of humanity's earliest surviving examples of parody, proving that even 3,000 years ago, people loved taking sacred cows, or in this case, undercooked lamb, and turning them into comedy gold. What makes this ancient bit so revolutionary is how it plays with storytelling itself. The joke mimics Homer's dactylic hexameter, the same rhythmic meter used in the Iliad, but applies it to something utterly mundane, a bad catering situation. It's the classical equivalent of Spaceballs riffing on Star Wars, or The Onion rewriting the Bible as a Yelp review. The humor isn't just in the absurd premise, it's in the contrast between lofty style and ludicrous content. Imagine Shakespearean actors delivering a dramatic soliloquy about losing their Wi-Fi password. That's the magic of parody. It takes the air out of grandeur, reminding us that even heroes get food poisoning. But here's the twist: these ancient parodies weren't just for laughs. They were early fan fiction, a way for ordinary people to reclaim myths that had been polished into untouchable masterpieces. By turning Odysseus into a picky eater, the joke democratizes him, making the epic hero relatable. It's the same impulse behind The Simpsons' Troy episode, or Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, taking revered stories and dragging them into the messy, hilarious real world. The Greeks understood something we often forget. Humor doesn't diminish art, it makes it breathe. Now, shift from parody to another ancient comedy staple, the art of the insult. A Spartan poet once dismissed a rival's work by saying, "Your verses are so limp, even the papyrus rolls itself up in shame." Brutal, absolutely, but there's a craftsmanship to it. The way the jab mirrors the thing it's mocking, like a perfectly thrown boomerang of spite. Compare that to modern roasts or Twitter clapbacks, where the best burns weaponize the target's own flaws. When a Roman graffiti artist wrote, "Your poetry is like your hair, thin and full of lice," they weren't just slinging mud, they were composing a tiny, vicious sonnet of scorn. What ties parody and insults together is their shared DNA of subversion. Both take something established, a heroic narrative, a person's reputation, and flip it sideways, exposing the gap between image and reality. Whether it's Odysseus battling a soggy bread roll or a Spartan poet eviscerating a rival's meter, the message is the same. Nothing is so sacred it can't be laughed at, and no ego is too big to be punctured. And honestly, that might be the most heroic lesson of all. Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing delivers one of history's most masterful insults when Benedict snarls, "You have such a February face, so full of frost, of storm and cloudiness." At first glance, it's poetic, almost beautiful, until you realize he's calling someone a miserable, weather-beaten grump. That's the genius of Elizabethan Burns. They wrap cruelty in velvet, turning insults into art. Compare that to a modern Twitter roast like, "Your takes are so bad, even your Wi-Fi disconnects to avoid them." Both land like a well-aimed dagger, but one's a handcrafted rapier, the other a meme-slinging switchblade. The difference isn't just style, it's cultural context. Shakespearean insults thrived in a world where language was power. Courtiers dueled with wit because literal duels could get you killed. A nobleman's reputation hinged on his ability to eviscerate with elegance, like when King Lear's fool quips, "Thou art nothing but a composition of knaves." The jab stings because it's layered. It mocks the target's character while showcasing the speaker's intellect. Fast forward to today, where Twitter roasts prioritize speed and virality. A tweet like, "Your personality is like a screensaver, vaguely entertaining until you realize there's nothing behind it," cuts deep precisely because it's instant, shareable, and ruthlessly efficient. Yet both eras share a tightrope walk. When does mockery tip from funny to cruel? Shakespeare's Beatrice might call Benedict a disease that must be caught, but the audience laughs because the venom is mutual, the battleground even. Contrast that with online pile-ons, where a single misfired joke can spiral into harassment. The line often hinges on consent. Elizabethan nobles chose to spar verbally, while Twitter's anonymity sometimes weaponizes humor as camouflage for bullying. This brings us to wordplay, the secret weapon of both eras. Shakespeare's "you scullion, you rampallion, you fustularian" isn't just nonsense, it's sonic violence, the rhythm of the words amplifying their bite. Modern roasts lean on puns and pop culture twists. You're the human equivalent of a connection error message. The artistry lies in the twist. The moment the brain catches the double meaning and delight overrides outrage. Whether it's a 16th century playwright or a 21st century troll, the best insults don't just wound, they make the target laugh through gritted teeth. So what's the through line from Shakespeare to subtweets? Humanity's unshakable belief that if you can't conquer your enemies, you can at least make them wince with style. Cicero once defended a client by declaring, "Non isti muse, sed sus cultor." It's not my knife, but his knife. But here's the twist, cultor sounds like cultor, meaning worshipper. So while arguing about a weapon, he slyly implied his opponent was a fanatic. This wasn't just lawyering, it was linguistic judo, proving that puns, the most maligned form of humor, have been weaponized for millennia. Fast forward to Arrested Development's infamous "I blew myself" gag or 30 Rocks werewolf bar mitzvah, and you'll spot the same DNA, words bending under the weight of double meanings, making audiences groan and grin simultaneously. What gives puns their staying power? Their democracy in action. Anyone can play, no fancy props needed. A Roman street vendor could crack a joke about Panny's bread and Panny's pain just as easily as a modern dad quips, "I'm reading a book on anti-gravity, it's impossible to put down." The humor isn't in the complexity, it's in the shared aha moment when a word's hidden skeleton gets revealed. Linguists call this semantic shift, but comedians know it as the ultimate mic drop proof that language itself is a hall of mirrors. Yet puns faced snobbery even in antiquity. Cicero's rival orators rolled their eyes at his wordplay, much like critics today dismiss puns as lowbrow. But history's laugh track tells a different story. The Carmina Burana, medieval Europe's viral hit, packed Latin puns so saucy they were banned in monasteries. Shakespeare riddled his plays with the Much Ado About Nothings, noting puns on eavesdropping and virginity. The through line is clear. Puns endure because they're rebellion disguised as word salad, smuggling subversion into syllables. Now shift from verbal slapstick to the physical kind. A Pompeian fresco shows a man slipping on a banana peel, or rather, its ancient equivalent, a rogue olive. The joke transcends language because the body's betrayal needs no translation. Whether it's a Roman mime taking a staged tumble or Buster Keaton's deadpan collapses, slapstick thrives on the same formula, anticipation, catastrophe, and relief. That oof moment when dignity meets gravity speaks to something primal, our collective memory of tripping in public and surviving to laugh about it. What ties puns and pratfalls together is their reliance on surprise. One hijacks language, the other hijacks balance, but both remind us that the world's rules are flimsier than they seem. So the next time someone groans at your "Roman walks into a bar" joke, remind them Cicero built an empire on wordplay. And if that fails, well, there's always the classic banana peel exit. Picture a wooden staircase in 12th century Kyoto, where a mischievous court artist has painted the final step to look like a gaping hole. An unsuspecting nobleman approaches, then leaps back in terror, much to the delight of hidden onlookers. This ancient Japanese prank, preserved in scrolls, isn't just a medieval meme, it's a masterclass in schadenfreude, that peculiar joy we feel at others' harmless misfortunes. The gag works because it plays on two universal truths. Our brains are hardwired to react to perceived danger, and nothing bonds strangers faster than shared laughter at someone else's startled jump. What's fascinating is how little the mechanics of this humor have changed. Replace the painted step with a whoopee cushion or a modern YouTube prank where someone falls through a CGI floor, and the psychological payoff is identical. Our laughter isn't cruel, it's cathartic. Anthropologists suggest this reflex evolved as a way to diffuse tension after false alarms. When that nobleman realizes he's been fooled, his relieved chuckle triggers a chain reaction, turning potential embarrassment into communal relief. Today's viral fail videos tap into the same instinct. Watch 10 seconds of America's funniest home videos, and you'll see the same pattern. A skateboarder wipes out, the crowd gasps, then erupts in laughter when he stands up unharmed. The ancient Japanese artist and the modern prankster are playing the same game, just with different tools, but schadenfreude has layers. A 14th century Zen parable takes the staircase gag further. After the nobleman falls for the trick, the artist reveals himself, only to trip over his own paintbrush. Now the laughter shifts targets, becoming a lesson in humility. This twist mirrors the best modern prank channels, where the prankster often becomes the butt of the joke. Think of impractical jokers' cringe-worthy punishments, or the way TikTok's prank wars often end with both parties covered in whipped cream. The humor isn't just about the fall. It's about the equalizing moment when everyone realizes no one's immune to life's banana peels. This brings us to observational humor, the art of spotlighting life's tiny absurdities. A Heian period poet once wrote, "The monk preaches detachment while swatting a fly," capturing the same hypocrisy that fuels today's stand-up routines. From George Carlin's rants about everyday annoyances to Ollie Wong's bits on parenting fails, the best observational comedy holds up a mirror to our collective blind spots. That Kyoto staircase, it's not just a prank. It's a physical manifestation of life's little deceptions, the way expectations and reality rarely line up. Whether it's a medieval nobleman or a modern commuter missing a step on an escalator, the laughter connects us across centuries, proving that some truths are just funnier when they're tripped over. A drunk stumbles through the streets of ancient Athens, clutching a jug of wine and slurring to anyone who'll listen. You think you're free? Try telling your boss you won't haul his stones tomorrow. The crowd roars not just because he's wobbling, but because he's right. This 4th century BCE gag, preserved on a scrap of parchment, isn't just a throwaway tavern joke. It's street philosophy wrapped in vinegar, a reminder that some of history's sharpest insights come disguised as hiccups. What makes the wise drunk such an enduring comic archetype? It's the collision of high and low, the fool who stumbles into truth. The Athenian lush echoes in Diogenes, the philosopher who lived in a barrel and told Alexander the Great to stop blocking his sunlight. He's the ancestor of every stand-up comic mining gold from life's petty frustrations, from George Carlin's rants about misplaced keys to Jerry Seinfeld's ode to laundry. The humor works because it validates our quiet rebellions, the eye roll at corporate jargon, the silent scream when the Wi-Fi drops. These jokes don't just make us laugh, they make us feel seen. But here's the twist: the drunk's wisdom thrives on shared context. His joke about hauling stones lands because every Athenian knew the back-breaking labor of construction projects, the original daily grind. Fast forward to today, and you'll find the same dynamic in workplace humor. A medieval scribe's quip about parchment cuts being the real paper cuts would have killed in a scriptorium, just as a modern meme about reply all email disasters resonates in office Slack channels. Inside jokes are comedy's secret handshake, bonding people through shared irritation. The real magic happens when these hyper-specific gripes cross centuries. A Roman graffiti artist carves, "Landlord, may your rent freeze in Hades." And suddenly, it's a tweet from a Brooklyn barrister. The targets change, olive oil prices become avocado toast markups, but the catharsis remains. Humor becomes a time machine, proving that the mundane isn't just funny, it's eternal. Whether it's a drunk's slurred truth or a millennial's espresso-fueled rant, laughter turns everyday absurdity into solidarity. And that's a philosophy worth toasting. A joke scribbled on the wall of a Pompeii tavern reads, "Who remembers Florus the flutist anymore?" Exactly. At first glance, it's baffling, like stumbling across a viral tweet from 2,000 years ago that says, "Drake who?" Without context, but that's precisely the punchline's power. It's not just a dig at some forgotten musician, it's a time capsule proving that even ancient humor relied on shared cultural knowledge. Florus was evidently the Roman equivalent of a one-hit wonder, famous enough in his day to be universally recognized but disposable enough to become comedy fodder. The joke isn't about the flutist, it's about the fleeting nature of fame itself. Fast forward to today, and the formula hasn't changed. Think about how many late-night monologue jokes hinge on references to TikTok stars or politicians who'll be irrelevant in 6 months. A meme mocking the Harlem Shake in 2024 would land with the same hollow thud as that florist jab. Humor has always been a mirror reflecting society's obsessions and its short attention span. The difference: our pop culture references now expire faster than Roman concrete lasts. A joke about planking or Gangnam Style feels as ancient as that flutist quip after just a decade. But here's where it gets meta. Some jokes intentionally weaponize their own expiration dates. Consider the rise of deep cuts in comedy references so niche they're practically insider trading. A Roman mosaic shows a man winking as he says, "Remember that thing with the senator's goat?" The humor isn't in the goat story, it's in the shared experience of having been there when it happened. Modern equivalents podcast in jokes or sitcom callbacks that only superfans will catch. These gags create intimacy through exclusivity, bonding audiences who get it while leaving everyone else to Google. Yet the real punchline might be this: the very jokes that feel timeless now will one day need footnotes. Shakespeare's bawdy wordplay had Elizabethan audiences howling, but today, half his dick jokes require a professor's explanation. Meanwhile, that Pompeii taunt about Florus, it's outlived empires precisely because its context evaporated. Stripped of its original meaning, it becomes a blank slate, a joke about jokes, a meta-commentary on how laughter itself is the only celebrity that never truly fades. So the next time you chuckle at a dated meme, remember, you're not just laughing at the past, you're starring in a future Romans punchline. An ancient Greek comedy fragment from the 4th century BCE shatters expectations with a bold move. An actor suddenly turns to the crowd and demands, "Well, aren't you going to laugh?" This isn't just a punchline, it's a theatrical lightning strike, one of the earliest recorded examples of breaking the fourth wall. The joke's power doesn't come from wit alone, but from its sheer audacity, the performer acknowledging the audience's presence, turning them from passive spectators into active participants. It's a moment that would feel right at home in a modern improv show, where hecklers become part of the act and crowd suggestions steer the comedy. This ancient Greek gag reveals something profound about humor's DNA. It's a collaborative act. Think about today's improv troupes like Whose Line Is It Anyway?, where the best moments emerge from the unpredictable alchemy between performers and audience. A shouted suggestion, "You're a llama farmer negotiating with a stubborn alpaca," isn't just inspiration, it's a co-creation. The Greeks understood this dynamic instinctively. Their comedies were performed at Dionysian festivals, where rowdy crowds fueled by wine weren't shy about booing or cheering. A surviving playbill even lists fines for actors who ignored audience reactions, proof that crowd participation wasn't just encouraged, it was enforced. But the audience's role goes beyond mere reaction. It shapes comedy's very boundaries. Consider how cultural taboos dictate what gets laughs. In ancient Athens, playwrights could mock politicians by name, even portraying them as bumbling idiots on stage. Yet religious humor had sharper limits. Jokes about the gods might earn applause one year and exile the next. Fast forward to modern stand-up, where comedians like Dave Chappelle or Hannah Gadsby navigate similarly fraught terrain. A joke about politics might slay in New York but bomb in Tokyo, while a taboo in one era, say, Victorian-era sex humor, becomes prime material in another. This tension between performer and crowd creates comedy's most electric moments, when a risky joke teeters on the edge of disaster. The Greek actors' demand for laughter wasn't just meta-humor, it was a high-wire act. Will the audience play along, or will they revolt? Modern improv thrives on this same razor's edge. When a performer incorporates a heckler's interruption into the scene. "Oh, you think this bit is tired? Great, you're now my sleep-deprived therapist." The crowd's energy becomes part of the act, yet for all its spontaneity, interactive humor has rules. Ancient Greek comedies relied on stock characters, the braggart soldier, the miserly old man, because audiences needed familiar touchstones to riff on. Today's improv operates on the same principle, yes, and isn't just a technique, it's a social contract. The audience offers a premise, the performers build on it, and the laughter comes from watching that fragile collaboration hold together or gloriously collapse. The through line from Dionysian festivals to downtown comedy clubs is clear. Laughter isn't something performers give an audience. It's something they make together, one precarious, glorious moment at a time. And that's the real punchline, no matter the era. The best jokes are the ones we're all in on. In the archives of medieval Europe, buried under layers of church decrees, lies the skeleton of a joke so dangerous it was literally banned by papal edict. The setup: a priest, a rabbi, and a donkey walk into a tavern, except the punchline implied the donkey was the holiest of the three. This wasn't just heresy, it was comedic treason, a direct challenge to the social and religious order. The punishment for telling it: excommunication in some regions, fines in others, and in one particularly zealous town, a public dunking in the river while townsfolk pelted the offender with rotten vegetables. What makes this joke so explosive wasn't just its blasphemy, it was its subversive inversion of power. In a world where the church dictated morality, Humor that dared to rank animals above clergy wasn't just offensive, it was revolutionary. Fast forward to today, and you'll find the same tensions simmering in comedy clubs and Twitter threads. When a modern comedian like Dave Chappelle or Ricky Gervais pushes boundaries on gender or race, the backlash often mirrors medieval outrage. Just swap excommunication for cancel culture and rotten vegetables for ratioed tweets. The through line here is about who gets to control laughter and why. Medieval authorities feared jokes because they democratized critique. A peasant mocking a bishop in a tavern was far more dangerous than a sword. Today, the battlegrounds have shifted, but the war's the same. When Netflix employees protested Chappelle's special or university students disinvited controversial speakers, they weren't just rejecting jokes, they were asserting ownership over what counts as acceptable discourse. Yet here's the paradox: the harder authorities try to suppress humor, the more potent it becomes. That banned medieval joke, it survived precisely because it was forbidden, passed down in whispers until it resurfaced in Renaissance farces. Modern, cancelled material often follows the same path, leaking underground, gaining mythic status, and eventually resurfacing on alternative platforms. Comedy, it seems, thrives on resistance. This brings us to the heart of laughter's legacy. Whether carved on a cathedral's hidden wall or uploaded to a dark web forum, forbidden jokes outlive their suppressors. They become time capsules, preserving not just punchlines, but the values and fears of the eras that tried to silence them. The real punchline: today's blasphemies are tomorrow's museum pieces, proof that humor, like water, always finds cracks in the dam. Buried in the ruins of ancient Rome, a joke scrawled on a tavern wall about a drunk philosopher stumbling into a well didn't just make people laugh. It planted the seed for an entire branch of comedy that would stretch across millennia. This gag, where the high-minded intellectual is humbled by physical reality, isn't just a one-off punchline. It's the prototype for everything from Shakespeare's pratfalling scholars to Charlie Chaplin's tramp outsmarting pompous elites. The DNA of that Roman joke authority figures knocked down a peg by their own hubris echoes in A Midsummer Night's Dream's bumbling actors, in Groucho Marx's razor-sharp takedowns of stuffed shirts, even in The Simpsons' Principal Skinner forgetting his own pants. What makes this lineage so powerful is how it weaponizes contrast. The original joke pits abstract wisdom against earthly clumsiness, a collision that never gets old because it mirrors life's absurdities. Shakespeare sharpened the formula in Much Ado About Nothing, where the verbose Dogberry mangles logic while accidentally solving the play's central mystery, proof that idiocy can outshine intellect. Fast forward to vaudeville, and you'll see the same dynamic in Abbott and Costello's Who's On First routine, where linguistic chaos topples the straight man's authority. The through line is unmistakable. The moment power trips over its own dignity, laughter erupts. But survival isn't just about structure, it's about adaptability. That Roman drunk joke morphed across cultures. In medieval Japan, it became a Zen parable about scholars overthinking tea ceremonies. In Renaissance Italy, Commedia dell'arte's Pantalone embodied the same blowhard meat-reality shtick. Each iteration tailored the premise to local anxieties, mocking samurai pretensions or merchant-class greed, while keeping the core intact. Modern sitcoms do the same. The Office's Michael Scott is essentially that ancient philosopher in a polyester suit, his cringe-worthy confidence perpetually undone by his own ignorance. Why do some jokes outlast empires? They tap into universal human glitches, our tendency to overestimate our competence, to confuse credentials with wisdom. The ones that endure aren't just funny, they're cathartic, letting us laugh at the parts of ourselves and our bosses that refuse to grow up. From Roman graffiti to TikTok skits, the best punchlines aren't just told, they're inherited. A Babylonian tablet from 3,000 years ago holds a joke about a lazy worker who naps through his shift, only to wake up and claim he was meditating on productivity. Fast forward to today, and you'll find nearly identical punchlines in sitcoms like The Office or memes about co-workers who mysteriously vanish before lunch. The similarities aren't coincidence, they're proof that the bones of comedy are shockingly consistent across millennia. Dig into history's oldest jokes, and you'll uncover a secret recipe. 3 ingredients that make humor timeless: surprise, relatability, and the ruthless efficiency of a well-timed punchline. Surprise is comedy's heartbeat. Our brains are wired to crave patterns, so when a joke hijacks expectations, the mental whiplash sparks laughter. Take that ancient Roman quip where a man brags about his wife's fidelity, only to trip over another man's sandals under their bed. The setup lulls you into predictability, then the punchline pulls the rug out. Modern comedians use the same trick. Think of Friends Chandler Bing deadpanning. "I'm not great at advice, can I interest you in a sarcastic comment?" The structure mirrors a 4,000-year-old Sumerian riddle that asks, what's never been seen since time began, before revealing a woman who didn't fart in her husband's lap. Both jokes weaponize the unexpected, proving that whether etched in clay or delivered in a Netflix special, surprise is comedy's universal language. But surprise alone isn't enough. The best jokes also tap into shared struggles. A medieval German jest about a farmer arguing with his donkey over who works harder wouldn't land without audiences recognizing the absurdity of daily grind. Similarly, a Babylonian tablet mocking bad bosses resonates because workplace frustration is eternal. Today's equivalents, from Dilbert comics to TikTok skits about passive-aggressive office emails, prove that humor survives when it mirrors collective experiences. Even the most ancient jokes act like societal mirrors. When a Pompeii graffito cracks, "Landlord, your rent hikes are crueler than Nero's fiddle." It's the same catharsis as a tweet complaining about modern housing costs. The targets change, but the itch being scratched doesn't. Then there's brevity, the unsung hero of comedy's endurance. The oldest surviving joke, that Sumerian quip about the flatulent wife, clocks in at just 12 words. Compare that to a modern one-liner like Mitch Hedberg's, "I used to do drugs. I still do, but I used to too." Both distill complex truths into compact packages, proving that economy of language is comedy's secret weapon. Ancient Roman graffiti mastered this. "I marvel, wall, that you haven't collapsed under the weight of idiot scribbles," delivers layered satire in 10 words. Twitter, with its character limit, is just rediscovering what ancient scribes knew. Constraints breed creativity. So why do some jokes outlive empires while others fade by closing time? The ones that stick are Trojan horses delivering truth wrapped in delight. They jolt us with surprise, hug us with familiarity, then vanish before overstaying their welcome. And perhaps that's the real punchline. Across 4,000 years, the things that make us laugh haven't changed because the things that make us human haven't either. Whether you're a Babylonian laborer groaning about your foreman or a modern viewer binging stand-up specials, laughter remains the shortest distance between two people or 2 millennia. So which of these ancient jokes made you laugh the hardest? Believe it or not, your answer might reveal more about your personality than you'd expect. If you couldn't resist the Roman graffiti mocking pompous landlords, you're probably the type who roots for the underdog, someone with a sharp eye for hypocrisy and a soft spot for sarcasm. Your ideal modern comedy. Think John Oliver eviscerating corporate greed or Twitter threads roasting tone-deaf celebrities. You're the friend who always has a perfectly timed eye roll for pretentiousness. Now, if you lost it at the Sumerian fart joke or the Babylonian chicken riddle, you're almost certainly a pun-loving goofball at heart. Your humor is equal parts silly and clever, finding joy in wordplay and the absurd. Today, you'd be the first to share a dad joke compilation or a meme about confused cats wearing hats. Life's too short not to laugh at a well-placed, "That's what she said," and you've got the chaotic energy of a medieval jester who just discovered whoopee cushions. Meanwhile, fans of that brutally dark Roman epitaph, "Here lies Marcus who died fleeing. Jokes on him, we all did." You're the squad's resident Gallows humor specialist. You appreciate comedy that stares life's chaos straight in the eye, whether it's a Pompeii survivor cracking wise about volcanoes or a modern, stand-up like Anthony Jeselnik turning misfortune into art. Your laugh might unsettle strangers, but your friends know it's how you process the world's madness. And if you adored the ancient Greek parody of Odysseus versus the Bad Buffet. You're a pop culture savant, the kind of person who spots a Star Wars reference in a shampoo commercial. Your humor thrives on clever twists of familiar stories today. You'd be the one rewriting Game of Thrones plot, holes into viral threads, or crafting Shrek memes with Renaissance painting captions. But here's the real kicker. No matter which joke landed for you, the fact that you're still laughing at punchlines from 4,000 years ago proves something incredible. Humor isn't just about culture or language, it's about the shared human experience. Those ancient scribes etching fart jokes onto clay weren't so different from us after all. They griped about work, rolled their eyes at authority, and yes, occasionally wondered if their spouse's cooking was secretly a war crime. So tell us in the comments which ancient joke won you over. Are you team #Roman roast, team #Sumerian puns, or something even weirder? Because here's the beautiful truth. Laughter has always been our most stubborn time traveler, outliving empires, plagues, and even bad Wi-Fi. And if that's not a punchline worth celebrating, I don't know what is. After traveling through 36 jokes that survived empires, plagues, and the slow erosion of centuries, one truth becomes undeniable. Laughter isn't just universal, it's persistent. These punchlines didn't endure by accident. They stuck around because they tap into something fundamental about being human. Whether it's the absurdity of power, the chaos of love, or the eternal struggle against bad bosses and worse cooking. That Sumerian joke about marital flatulence, it's not just a fart gag. It's a 4,000-year-old reminder that domestic life has always been equal parts ridiculous and relatable. The Roman graffiti mocking landlords, proof that economic gripes transcend time as surely as rent payments do. What's striking isn't just how recognizable these jokes feel, it's how they expose the raw nerves of every society. The Babylonian jabs at lazy workers and the medieval roasts of corrupt clergy reveal the same thing. Humor has always been a pressure valve, a way to confront inequity without outright rebellion. Even the darkest gags, like those Pompeian epitaphs laughing in death's face, show how laughter helps us grapple with the unthinkable. Fast forward to today, and you'll find the same impulses in pandemic memes or workplace sitcoms. The targets shift, but the catharsis remains. Yet for all their timelessness, these jokes are also cultural fingerprints. The Egyptians' puns about gods tripping over their own beards reflect a society where divinity was intimate and flawed, while Rome's sarcastic tavern graffiti thrived in a world of sharp class divides. The differences matter. They remind us that humor isn't just a mirror of human nature, but of specific humans navigating specific struggles. A joke about Pharaoh's egos would have flopped in Sparta, just as a medieval peasant's roast of the local lord might not land in a modern boardroom. Context shapes comedy, but the need to laugh, that's eternal. So here's the real punchline. These 33 jokes aren't relics. They're proof that history's best classroom might just be the comedy club. Every chuckle they spark across millennia is a high five from the past, a way of saying, we see you, we were you. The Roman who carved, I owe, it's off to work I go, into a wall would have instantly understood your student loan memes. The medieval monk who doodled a bishop falling into a latrine would have retweeted a politician's viral fail. The medium changes, but the message doesn't. Life's absurdities are best survived together, one laugh at a time. Now it's your turn. Which of these ancient jokes still slaps hardest in 2024? Is it the Pompeian burn about idiot graffiti artists, or the Sumerian clapback about work ethic? Drop your pick in the comments, and if you've ever used humor to survive a bad day or a bad millennium, hit subscribe for more stories where history gets the last laugh. After all, the oldest joke in the world might just be the one we're still telling. Things are terrible, but aren't we clever for laughing about it? Some traditions are worth keeping. Want to make a 4,000-year-old joke land in a modern coffee shop or light up a TikTok feed? Here's the secret. Ancient humor isn't about recycling punchlines. It's about rediscovering the timeless rhythms that make them tick. Take that Sumerian quip about the wife who never farted in her husband's lap. The shock value might feel outdated, but the structure is pure comedy gold, an absurd premise undercut by mundane truth. To adapt it today, ditch the ancient specifics but keep the DNA. Imagine a TikTok skit where an influencer boasts, "My relationship is perfect, we've never once argued." Cut to her partner mouthing, "She's literally yelling at me right now," while holding up a hair dryer to muffle her rant. The joke's soul, the gap between fantasy and reality, stays intact, but the delivery taps into modern insecurities about curated social media personas. Timing is everything. Ancient jokes often relied on slow burn setups. Think of the Babylonian riddle about the chicken crossing the road, which meandered like a TED talk before the punchline. Today's audiences crave immediacy. Condense that same joke into a 3-second Vine-style loop. A smug philosopher asks, "Why did the chicken cross the road?" Only for the bird to bolt past him as text flashes. To avoid your lecture, the humor's the same, but the pacing matches our dopamine-drunk attention spans. Context is your best tool. That Roman joke mocking graffiti artists in Pompeii, it subverted power dynamics. Today, flip it to roast influencer culture. I marvel, Instagram, that you haven't collapsed under the weight of thirst traps. The bite comes from targeting modern vanity while keeping the original sly irony. Even Gallows humor translates when medieval jests laughed at plague deaths. They mirrored our pandemic memes about quarantine hair or Zoom fails. The key is to preserve the catharsis while updating the stakes. Now try it yourself. Pick an ancient joke, like the Egyptian magician who tricked the pharaoh with the goose decapitation. Rewrite it as a YouTube short. A CEO demands a viral stunt, so the intern swaps his epic fail clip with a cat video, leaving him ranting about engagement metrics to a comment section spamming, "Where's the kitty?" The bones of the joke, authority humbled by clever underlings, stay intact, but the flesh is pure digital age chaos. Your turn. Drop your ancient joke remix in the comments. Whether you're roasting Roman landlords as modern HOA presidents or turning Viking insults into gamer trash talk, remember, the best humor isn't bound by time. It's just waiting for you to hit post. If these ancient jokes left you hungry for more, you're in luck because history's punchlines are hiding in plain sight, waiting to be rediscovered. Start with the Philogelos, the oldest surviving joke book, compiled in 4th century Greece. Modern translations like William Berg's edition make these gags accessible, complete with footnotes unpacking the cultural context behind why a grumpy philosopher or a forgetful bridegroom would have slayed in an Athenian tavern. For a deeper dive, check out museums like London's British Museum, where cuneiform tablets scrawled with Babylonian riddles sit just rooms away from Roman graffiti. Their online collections even let you zoom in on Pompeii's walls to spot cheeky cartoons of misbehaving gladiators. Prefer your comedy with academic rigor. JSTOR open access articles include gems like Laughter in the Ruins, analyzing how medieval gallows humor helped communities cope with the Black Death. Or explore the Ancient Humor Archive, a digital project cataloging everything from Egyptian papyrus cartoons to Viking insult poetry. For hands-on learners, workshops like Oxford's Ancient Stand-Up series recreate Greco-Roman comedy techniques, yes, including how to heckle in Attic Greek. And don't overlook the power of place. Visiting Ephesus in Turkey, stand in the very theater where audiences roared at fart jokes 2,000 years ago. Rome's baths of Caracalla still echo with the ghost of ancient pranksters who painted fake holes on staircases. Even local libraries often hold surprises, like facsimiles of the Luttrell Psalter, where medieval monks doodled cheeky margin art of bishops riding snails. The best part, you can contribute. Platforms like Zooniverse crowdsource translations of newly unearthed joke tablets, turning armchair historians into comedy archaeologists. So whether you're scrolling digitized scrolls or standing where a Roman jester once slipped on an olive, remember, history's laughter isn't locked away. It's just waiting for you to join the conversation.